Now, in case people want to know, since we're talking about the word Israel, in case people want to know, okay, what does that mean? Because his name was Jacob, and then it was changed to Israel. Well, if you go into the history, Jacob name was given when he was born as a boy. It tells you the story. Let me not say history. Well, some people may not want to look at it like it's really history. It could be fables, whatever. But that is not the point. So when before Jacob was born, when he was a little baby inside a belly, according to the story of the Bible, and he was a twin. He was twin with another boy named that was going to be called Edom. So they were struggling inside the belly, and then I guess it looks like as if the first child, the first baby that comes out, it looks like he's the winner, which was Esau. It looks like he was the winner, and then Esau came out, and it says, "Oh, Jacob held onto his foot." I mean, it sounds like, wow, is that really, babies fighting and then one actually hold the other one foot? Okay, all right, maybe it did happen, maybe it did not, maybe it's just fable. I don't know, but they were trying to let us understand something. So that's supposed to represent the Esau gonna have a time where they running stuff, and then the baby Jacob holding his heel, holding by the heel, means eventually when Esau goes down, Jacob gonna be next to run everything. So that little boy, that's why back then when people had kids, they give them names that were like prophetic, that would represent what they're gonna be doing in life. So Jacob was supposed to mean supplanter. So the word supplanter means to eradicate, to uproot, to take the place of somebody else. So to be it's almost like it says, well, he who laughs last laughs best. So Esau gonna come up first and has his laugh. Jacob gonna come and take over after Esau is done with his rulership. So that's why Jacob was called a supplanter, meaning in that fight inside the belly, although Esau came out first, Jacob was the winner. Jacob, he came out, he's like, yo, the fight is not done. It's not over. He's still holding on to his to his heel. So that's why Jacob was called Jacob. Now after Jacob had a wrestling match with a mysterious guy, supposed to be the Most High, although not the Most High, maybe his messenger, supposed to be a guy from another world, a so-called angel. And when I say angel, I don't mean something to do with wings. Meaning a regular person, look like a regular man, just like us, but he's not from here. Just like in Genesis 1:26, it says we were made in the God's image. So some a guy that looks just like us, but he wasn't from here. So somehow maybe he was sent to test Jacob to see if Jacob is a man or a little wuss, a little I don't want to say bad words, but a little soft guy. So supposedly, according to that story, Jacob wrestled that guy the whole night. Until he did something and broke, Jacob something, leg or something. When you read the story, although the angel won, but Jacob, just like in the fight in the belly, you might as well say he was the winner, because he's a human being, fighting another being from another dimension, from somewhere else. And he was still able to fight the whole night. He didn't surrender. He didn't back down. And And then, so that's why now they said, okay, well, it says with men, when you fight men, you still prevail, you still hold your own, Jacob, even in the belly as a baby. Now you fight an angel now, somebody, a super fighter, and you still were able to fight the whole night. You know, you didn't take really no ass whooping. You know, hopefully the word ass whooping wasn't profanity for some people, because I am talking about the Bible. So hopefully nobody got offended. So say, okay, well, now I'm going to change your name from Jacob to the next level now, to Israel, meaning you somebody now that fought a God now, and still you held your own. You know, no, you're not the king of this, you're the prince of this. So the word Israel will be prince of God. Prince of El, and El, like I said, is not referring to the El that these other people in idolatry worship. You know, referring to just the word that says that means the word God, although that's not the Most High's name. So now to go back to the real topic of of the discussion. Who wrote the Bible? I only really briefly went through just the first 5 books. You know, we had 4 different sources that put together that were put together by a so-called redactor, and history would say it looks like it was Ezra, prophet Ezra. Although there's a book in the so-called Apocrypha that says, Ezra did put books together, and scholars trying to say, well, looks like he could have been the redactor that took all these 4 sources and put them in one. The J source, the J documents, meaning the group of Israelites, the group of Hebrews that believed the Most High's name was Yahweh, Yahweh, and then scholars saying that those group of people, whether they were priests, scholars, they came from the southern kingdom. The southern kingdom. When the nation of Israel split in 2, you had the southern kingdom, meaning the kingdom of Judah. And you had the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel. So they came from the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah. So the kingdom of Judah always, according to, I guess, history, biblical history, tradition, whatever it is, the kingdom of Judah always refer to the Most High as Yah or Yahweh, meaning all the kings of Judah, King Solomon, King David, they all refer to the Most High as Yah. That's the kingdom of Judah. Those are the Yahwehs. Yahwehs. And then you have the J documents. Those are people. No. The first one is the J. You have the E documents. Those are the people who refer to the Most High first as El or Elohim in the beginning, or El Shaddai. They use the word El, and then later on, and when Moses saw the burning bush, and that's when the name was introduced to them, and then they say, okay, well, we're gonna stop calling the Most High as Elohim. Just like you see in the book of Genesis, the first chapter. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So if you read that in the Hebrew, it's in the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth. So if I had to say it in Hebrew, let me see if I can remember. Bereshit, bara, in the beginning created Elohim, the heavens, Hashamayim, Ve'eth Haaretz, and the earth. So in the beginning, created Elohim, the heaven, Hashemayim, Ve'eth Haaretz. Yeah, my Hebrew is not like good, but if I do want to read something in Hebrew, as far as reading it to understand what it's saying, at least I can do a little something. But I don't speak it fluently, like like some people. But I can do a little something. So at least that line, you'll see, they will say that line was definitely written by the people who believe the Most High's name as Elohim. And then as you read on, you'll see in certain parts where, like I said with Noah, when it says blessed be Yah, Yahweh, Yahweh, Yah, whatever you want to say, the God of Shem. So at least shows that there, they would say that line right there came from the J documents, the Yahweh's documents. And then you have the P documents, the priests now. A group of priests, they had their own book, and then they wrote their stuff. Those, they believe in both Yahweh and Elohim. And then you have Deuteronomy, the D documents. And then the redactor put all four of them together, and then at times put his own little thing in there. So that's just the first five books of so-called Moses that Moses didn't write. And all these books, all these documents, they were written different times. They say, according to scholars out there, the Elohim group, they came from the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel. They were the priests over there. And those priests, when you read the Bible, those priests in the northern kingdom, they weren't like the priests in the southern kingdom. The priests of the southern kingdom, they were priests of the Most High. The priests in the northern kingdom, that's after they say, well, we're not following the Bible no more. We're not following these things. We're going to have our own religion. First of all, we're going to make our capital Samaria, which means little Sumer. So they went back to the religion of Sumer, and whatever they were worshiping over there in Sumer in the time of Abraham, where Ishtar or Ashtoreth was the queen of heaven, which is Mary in the New Testament. Tammuz, his Tammuz, which was her son and also her husband, or whatever. That's supposed to be the Jesus of the New Testament. So they went back to to that religion, and then their priests weren't like you had to be from the tribe of Levi to be priest. So in the northern kingdom, anybody could be a priest, as long as you were willing to do the sacrifice. They ask you to do whatever it is. If you read the Bible, it tells you, whatever, as long as you were willing to do the sacrifice they wanted you to do in their religion that they created in the northern kingdom, then you could be a priest. You didn't have to be a Levite. In fact, it looks like as if all the Levites that were living in the northern kingdom, and those 10 tribes, among those 10 tribes, they were fired from doing Levite work, because now they had the new type of priests, and they definitely went into idolatry. So the scholars saying the E documents came from those priests over there, who did believe in whatever the El God, who did believe in all type of other stuff, but they still had different versions of what happened, tradition that was passed down to them. They wrote them down. And then after the northern kingdom was overthrown by the Assyrian, they were taken, most of these people, they were taken to Assyria. They were enslaved. they were taken in chains into Assyria. And the ones who did not go to Assyria, those priests, whatever, who did not go to Assyria, they had their own version of their religion, their Bible, their whatever tradition they believe in. They had their own version of whatever that was passed down to them, or a tradition that has to do with the nation of Israel. So they wrote them down, and then those who didn't go to Assyria, according to scholars, they're saying that's when they came to the southern kingdom to live there, to hide there, to be back with their brothers from the southern kingdom. And that's when they said they probably brought their book, whatever they had, their book, the E documents, and then brought it down there. And then eventually later on, when Ezra, whoever else took all these books and put together, then you get all those stories, in the J documents, the Y document, which is the in Yahwinism, the Yahwist documents, the whatever you want to call it, they had stories, that didn't use the word Elohim. So if you go into the Bible, especially if you're trying to read in the Hebrew, in the first 5 books, you'll see every time they refer to the Most High as Yah, that's the J documents. And in the E one, that's the E documents. So now you'll see in the E documents, you'll see the story of Moses, the story of Moses' and first encounter with with the Most High Yahweh, So that's why when you read the Bible, you'll see a lot of those stories. They have 2 versions of them. You'll see that they have 2 creation stories. They'll have 2 flood stories. 2, because you had different people, different groups that wrote these things. Sometimes those stories were the same, sometimes they were not. So you'll see, they say, well, in one story, it looks like a flood. Well, I have it somewhere. You'll see the flood. After the flood only took 40 days, 40 nights. Everything was good, and then they send a raven to go check out what's going on. And then you'll see another version. It wasn't a raven. They sent a dove to go check out what's going on before they knew if they could come up. They could come up the ark. And then you'll see before they enter the ark, you'll say, well, you bring a pair of clean animals inside the ark. Then you'll see another story that says bring 7 pairs of clean animals inside the ark. Because the reason I'm talking about who wrote the Bible before I even say anything about the Bible, because there's a lot of people who believe in the Bible. If they were to hear that there's only one contradiction in the Bible, they're ready to run away from the Bible. Me, I'm trying to really give the understanding why, if there's a contradiction, this is how it happened. Because it wasn't one person just sit down and write the Bible, and then that's it. But when you have multiple sources and then somebody put them together, there'll be contradictions. If you come, I don't believe. I'm a Hebrew. I don't believe in the New Testament at all. But one thing I'm gonna say, the same way you see, I'm saying, the first 5 books of Moses, you see like 4 sources that contradict. That some of them does have contradiction in there. They contradict each other, but it's still in one and so-called 5 books of Moses. In the New Testament, they kind of follow something similar. The only thing they didn't do, the first 4 books of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, they kind of follow the same thing as the old. Like they give you 4 different versions about Jesus, and then at times you see contradiction because it's supposed to be 4 different people. Mark didn't know Luke. Luke didn't know Matthew didn't know what. It's four different. Well, although I'm not saying there was a guy named Matthew that wrote the book. That's a different story. I'm not saying there was a guy named John that wrote the book. That's another. That's another story. Those who know. Those who don't know, right now, that's not the topic. You know. So you'll see in the book of Matthew, they'll give you a genealogy of Jesus, and then they'll say, well, Jacob's father is this name. And then I think when you go to the book of Luke, then they'll say, well, not Jacob's father. In the book of Matthew, Joseph's father is, I think, Jacob. Well, this ain't no mystery. You can go read it. I don't really read the New Testament like this, but I read it a long time ago. But you'll see that there'll be a plain contradiction where they say Joseph's father was this guy, and then the other book would say Joseph's father. One would say Joseph's father was Jacob. Joseph, so-called Mary's husband, was Jacob, and the other one say his father was Heli. They're like, okay, how can, like, what was the name of his father? Like, was it Jacob or Heli? Like, it's a clear contradiction. Well, that's two different people who give two different versions. That's not the reason why I don't follow the New Testament. That has nothing to do with that. If that's the case, I wouldn't even follow the Old Testament. There are contradictions in there, but I understand how the contradictions came about in the Old Testament, the same way it came about in the New Testament. The New Testament thing, that's a totally different topic. The reason I don't follow some guy walking on water and taking a couple of fish and turning it to a bunch of fish to feed a bunch of people, there's a lot of Bugs Bunny stories in there. This guy went and he went to some wedding. I don't think he was even invited, and he went in and took some water and turned it to wine. I mean, listen, if I did know a guy that turned water to wine, yeah, that guy would definitely be my good friend, because I don't mind drinking a little wine sometimes. But, well, basically in a nutshell, the Bible, when they ask who wrote the Bible is a collection of books, and they were written by different authors that use different sources throughout different time in history. So I focus mainly on the first 5 books from Moses, because those 5 books, they weren't written like regular books in our time, where one person just wrote one book, let's say Genesis, and then one person just wrote Genesis. Genesis, somehow they use different sources of different people. Just the book of Genesis alone, they use different sources and they put it in one book. And at times, certain sources are different from the other source. The other sources are sometimes they contradict each other. And then they did the same thing with Exodus. It was in one source. Those 4 sources, and they did that with Numbers and Leviticus, Numbers. But Deuteronomy, on the other hand, was just written by just one source, according to investigation of the book of Deuteronomy. So they call the person Deuteronomist. So at least that one book, out of the first 5 books of Moses, was written by one person. And scholars even say that not only that one person wrote the book of Deuteronomy, that same person wrote the next few books after the book of Deuteronomy, like the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, the book of Judges, the book of 1 King and 2 King. So they were all written based on the style of writing. They were all written by the same person. Deuteronomy all the way up to 2 King, and then Chronicles. I guess that's First Chronicles, 2 Chronicles. That's somebody else. So in a nutshell, or in conclusion, once you understand the first 5 books of Moses, how they were written, the others, the book of Isaiah, they were written, I guess, some of those books in the Old Testament, in the Tanakh, like the prophetic books, some of them, a couple of them, more than one source. you'll see almost the whole book was written by one person, and then in the last few chapters, somebody else came in and just dropped something else. So the answer to who wrote the Bible is different people, different authors, and use different sources throughout different time. So the right question would be, I think somebody would have to ask, okay, who wrote the book of? Let's pick one book at a time. You cannot go to a library and say, well, who wrote this library? That's like when you look behind me, there's a bunch of books here. I mean, if you were to look here, there's a bunch of books here. There's a bunch of books here. So this is my little library here. Nobody can come here and say who wrote this library. That makes no sense at all. So if you ask me who wrote this book, then I'll open and say, okay, what's this author? Not that year, 19 whatever, 2000 something. Okay, you know. So any book here, you cannot ask who wrote the Bible. That makes the only people that would ask that question because they don't really understand the Bible, how it was written. It's not just one book. Although they say, do you have a Bible? It sounds like one book, but when you open, it's a bunch of books. It's a collection of books. It's a mini library. 66 books, and those are the ones that certain people in time said, well, we're gonna create a canon, meaning these are the books we're supposed to read, and we're gonna take those, and they left out a bunch where they said, well, after they read those, they're like, oh, that sounds weird, we're not gonna put this one here. Oh, that one even weirder. If it was me who had access to maybe all these books, maybe let's say 300 books, maybe my collection would have been well, in fact, if I did read 300 books, my collection probably would be more than 66 books, or it could have been even less. Based on which ones I agree with. So this is the answer to who wrote the Bible. So with this, I'm going to say shalom. I don't think I left anything out. I mean, I didn't really, I talk a lot about the first 5 books, but the other books, you want to know who wrote the book of Jeremiah, you can even Google it. Most likely Jeremiah wrote that one. Who wrote the book of Isaiah? Most likely Isaiah wrote that one. If he didn't write it, he had somebody as he talking and say, can you write this, write this? Those are not really mysterious books trying to find out who wrote them. Maybe the book of Psalm, different authors in the book of Psalm, different people who put this Psalm here, David and this other guy and that other guy and this other guy, but the other books you can, let's say the book of Chronicles, First Chronicle, Second Chronicle, maybe one guy, but definitely I had to focus on the first 5 books of Moses, because the first 5 books of so-called Moses. I say so-called Moses because very clear Moses did not write the book of the first 5 books. Well, I remember I was watching this debate, this guy Zion Lex versus Harris somebody versus Zion Lex. Zion Lex, when this guy was trying to press Zion Lex, you're asking him, did Moses write the book of the first 5 books of Moses? All those Zion Lex said, no, he didn't write it, but at the same time he wrote it because the fact that the word that was used there, sefer, which means books, also means oral tradition. So it was Moses' oral tradition. That they I don't know about that. I think that Zion Lex could have just simply said, well, Moses did not write the book of the first 5 books of Moses. It's clear to know that because at the end of the book, it's talking about Moses' death, and that the Most High, buried him. Nobody know where he was buried. Moses couldn't have known this. And then again, inside those books, first 5 books of Moses, you'll see, this is what what happened when children of Israel was on this side of the river Jordan, which is where Moses was before, and then obviously the person who was at that time, the person who was writing the thing, they were already on the other side. You know, they say, well, it's like saying, yeah, when they were across the streets, this is what happened, but now we're here. You know, obviously, you know, the person who's writing it at this point is saying, when you know, referring to when you were across the street. Now we're not across the street no more. In other words, when Moses was the other side of Jordan, you know, now they're on this side now, which means they're in the promised land. Moses never saw the promised land. So there are many clues. There are many clues that shows you that Moses did not write those books. Although there are many words in there that says, the Most High said, told Moses, tell the nation of Israel this, you know, tell them this law, tell them that law, tell them this law. So